Hey there folks, this is GreenXI welcoming you right back to Let's Play Higurashi. This is episode 166. In the last episode, or since the start of this arc really, we've seen a lot of Miyo's past and her growing up, how much she was tortured at the orphanage, how much she was saved by her grandpa, how her grandpa was ridiculed for his research, even though it was really good research, but they didn't want it out in the open yet, the Japanese government and stuff I expect. And now we've seen that Miyo has made it to Hinamizawa, finally! The amazing Hinamizawa. Somewhere I'd love to live. Except for all the deaths and all that, obviously, but... Let's get on with it. I think now we're going to get to the main plot of the story of the arc, instead of just getting background information, which I love, but, you know. Welcome! Welcome to the world of Higurashi Chapter 8, Matsurubayashi. Yeah, that was all prologue, bloody hell. In this world, you will be able to recreate the story from Hanyu's point of view, that's Orishiro-sama. Your objective is to create the June 1983 ideal to you. You will need to collect many different fragments to make that possible. However, Takano's conviction is very strong, as we've seen. To overturn it, you will need a lot of effort and a lot of fragments. I'll warn you right now, it'll be a slow and painful process. Hanyu went through it for over 100 years, and she even had to stop and give in to fate. Defeating Takano's conviction will not be easy. The trial in this world will put you through as much pain as Hanyu had to endure. You may surrender, just like Hanyu did, after being emotionally worn down by the constant repetition of the worlds woven by countless fragments. When you feel like surrendering, you can end this game at any time. But if you do, the worlds revolving around your friend's fate will be limited to Onikakushi through Minagoroshi, their different arcs. By forgetting about this world and uninstalling this product, you will finally accept death. I love it. I love the fourth wall breaking. Just like Rika did. Your ideal June 1983 can be created by putting together 50 fragments that are scattered all over this world. To connect these fragments together, you'll need the right ones. There are 50 of them, which may be dizzying, but oh, by the way, this is giving you a hint of how to get the secret ending. You have to put the fragments in the right way, but we need to complete the game first, like I said at the end of the last episode. However, this world isn't that merciless. To ease your pain, there'll be a little help for you. When you choose the wrong pieces, your only ally here will give you a sign that it's not yet time to put those fragments together. As long as the sign remains, you won't be able to connect them. You might as well go look for different ones. After you put other fragments together, you might be able to connect the ones you couldn't put together earlier. When that happens, she'll let you know. Let's put those fragments together. Then you'll be able to join the other ones too. When you connect all 50, they'll become one big fragment. There you'll find your ideal June 1983. That's when the long-awaited Matsurubayashi will begin. Before you peek at each fragment, why don't you line up all 50 of them first? Most of them require other fragments, so there are only a few you can actually look at. Let's try to find those first. To see the conditions for connecting fragments, just point the cursor at them. Before anything else, let's find the ones you can look at without any conditions. This will be an extremely long and difficult trial. Let me tell you again, Hanyu challenged this for over 100 years and gave up on it. If you believe in miracles in the same way your friends do, even if you don't live in the world where they live, if you believe in them... Welcome! Welcome to the world of Higurashi Chapter 8. In this world you'll be tested to see if you believe in the world of Rika and the others believed in. A miracle only happens when everyone combines their strength. The June 1983 created by Takano is nearly indomitable. She's gathered many people whose powers are beyond the average person to her side, her backers being at the centre of national authority. Even if 100 dice are all rolled once, there wouldn't even be a chance to defeat her. In other words, a miracle is the only way forward. A miracle happens only when everyone combines their strength. And you're the one of them. Are you ready? I'm more than ready. The key to a long journey is not to pressure yourself too hard. Well, let's take it at a light pace. I'll work while drinking my usual wine. Shall we begin? We have all the time in this world. Hey, I like how it introduced that. Normally this would be the point when you're midway through a chapter that I would sort of break the episode off, but that's not long enough. We'll keep going. You've obtained new fragments. How is this going to work? Is it like tips? I guess we'll save a sec. Start saving over now. Okay, all we can do is connect, so let's have a look. Oh, 7 pages of them. Okay. Yeah, we need to go through it all. This fragment can't be connected yet. Okay. H-170, the discontinuation of Sadako Hojo's dissection plan is required. Kyosuke Irie's motive to become a doctor is required. We got his motive. Okay, I'm gonna have to pay more attention then. I thought it would just be reading through it until the end. Third year's curse of Oshiro-sama is required. We have it from other arcs. Is that not what I was looking for? No, we need to have it from this itself. An L5 stage patient's dissection is required. Help from the Queen Carrier is required. I mean, I don't really want to click every one of them and then have this message all the time, if that's not what I'm meant to be doing. Live specimen for research, but I want to... I don't know. It's all parts we've seen from other arcs, obviously, innit? Because father being marked as an opportunist is required. Because mother's suspicion is required. We haven't seen that. Death of Sadako Hojo's aunt is required. We know that with the baseball bat, right? This fragment is required first. Oh, okay, we'll go for that then. That's a hell of a hint. Sorry for being late. I had an unusually large number of patients today. Thank you for coming, Lieutenant Colonel Irie. Tomitaki stood up suddenly and saluted when he saw Irie come into the room. Alright, stop calling me Lieutenant Colonel. I'm a doctor, I just can't get used to military ranks. Can you call me Director instead? Understood, Director Irie. Ha! Tomitaki, of course, knew that Irie didn't like to be called Lieutenant Colonel, so it was something of a joke. They laughed casually together. On the other hand, Takano looked rather fed up with it. She couldn't stand hearing the same joke over and over, and was even thinking about talking to Tomitaki about it. But she didn't want to hurt his feelings, so she simply never had the chance. Maybe it's because of how Tomitaki pronounces it, but she keeps hearing Risa, Lieutenant Colonel in Japanese, Nisa. Oh, that was good of the yeah, that was good of him to put that in for us Westerners. Once she heard it that way, she kept hearing Irie, Risa every time Tomitaki said it. When Takano told Irie about it, he had a good laugh. Today was just a simple meet and greet, and tomorrow was the actual meeting. Tomitaki had already arrived, but there would be more inspectors from Tokyo at the meeting, waiting to hear about the progress that had been made. Anyway, I heard the whole village is all up in arms about the dam construction project. You can say that again. The village is in such a mess. I participated in the local municipal explanation meeting as an official, but the whole thing was alive with angry shouts and profanities. After the basic Hinamizawa Dam project was announced, the village was consumed with uproar. The government retracted their plans for concessions rather early on. They made their aggressive stance clear. They didn't want the locals to take advantage of them by showing their willingness to compromise. However, that backfired horribly. As they had historical ties to the land, the government's actions only made their bonds stronger. Neither the government nor the locals wanted to back down. People from Hinamizawa are rather hot-tempered. Maybe because they're the descendants of demons, or maybe because their village is going to be swamped. Flooded. It's not funny. That wild meeting lasted all night. I feel your pain. Really, it's not funny, Tomitaki-san. So what's going on with the dam construction? Are they really going to submerge this village? Tokyo is applying their pressure to the situation too. Things might seem clamorous on the surface, but in truth, the supporters behind it are wavering rather hard. I hope their pressure produces effect soon. The whole village is buzzing with action from dusk to dawn, and I worry the villagers' minds are growing agitated. Sometimes I have to listen to my patients go on and on about their opinion on the dam construction plan. Why'd you even listen to them? You're too nice. I have to. I'm a clinic director first, and research centre director second. It's part of my job to listen to them. That's very nice of you. It's admirable. I know the people in Tokyo will call off the plan sooner or later, but the villagers won't. So they have to live in fear that they might be forced to leave the land where they lived for generations. Even if they're told to leave, they don't have money and a lot of them are old. Maybe some wanted an increase in the amount of compensation they'd be offered, but the government changed its mind. I don't think it's possible for them to come to a peaceful agreement at this point. There was actually some villagers who were satisfied with that amount and were willing to leave. However, the Sonsaki family didn't want to change their stance against the issue. They were actually leading the villagers in the fight against the government. There were blaring announcement vans everywhere, and ads and flyers are attached to the circulation notices. It's a serious matter for them. I guess I can understand. Yeah, losing their home. I hope the construction plan will be called off soon for their sake. Once it's called off, this village will become peaceful again. I know that, of course. Things are moving right along in Tokyo, so please give us a little more time. I've heard a rumour from Tokyo that you're having problems finding a way to pressure the Minster construction. Is that true? That's the first time I've seen Miyo in this arc, innit? Oh, I'm not sure, but I've heard myself that they're having a little problem with some of the details. Takano had powerful people supporting her, but they didn't control all of Japan. There were some things they excelled in, but also other things that they weren't too good at. Finding a way to put pressure onto the Minster construction fell into the latter. In all seriousness though, we really won't be facing any requests to leave this area because of the dam, right? Of course not. I can guarantee that won't happen. It's just taking longer than we thought, that's all. So please continue your research. We were told that if things can't be resolved peacefully, then we may have to use drastic measures. Drastic measures? What do you mean, Tomotaki-san? You don't need to worry about that part, Director Irie. Please let's take care of it. I see. Okay. Thank you for your work. It's fine, Director Irie. The dam construction plan will be called off. It's already been decided. Ah, okay. As Takano giggled, Tomotaki laughed too. However, Irie couldn't understand what was so funny, so he felt left out. Irie only understood the meaning of those drastic measures when he examined a young boy he had never seen in the village before. Okay. So these are going to be really short parts, right? Or maybe it varies. But, it's all about the dam, and we're way back before Satoko and everything. Not Satoko. Kaiichi and everything comes to meet. Right, so let's have a little look. See if anything meets up with what we just saw. It'll only be one of them. Repetitive apologies. No. Fragments required first to be done now, and obviously. Help from the Queen Carrier. Result of the research. Nope. It's a lot for them to look through. Irie's reminiscence? Is it... This fragment is required first. I'm confused. It said the other one was required first. Okay, we might as well read it now and see how it turns out. Group physical exams are very meaningful for our research. Although it's only for certain age groups, we can examine many of the Hinamizawa residents at the same time. It's a perfect cover for our research centre. I sort of wish we'd looked for the other one first now, because this is going to confuse story-wise, I think. But we'll do this one for now, and we'll see how they link up. Also, because of several arrangements, we have a monopoly on the villagers' corpses, and can perform autopsies on them too. There certainly wasn't an environment this rich in opportunity for those in the medical field. Our follow-up on the work of the late Dr. Takano is going smoothly. The amount of data he compiled is absolutely astounding. He truly was an incredible researcher. Excuse me, Director. Oh, Takano-san. Thanks for your work. We just received the rest of the test results from Tokyo. Here they are. Thank you. It's getting interesting, ain't it? Hee. I'm glad we can share this joy. Takano-san's my assistant, who was sent from the Self-Defense Force. But she's far from the image I have of an SDF officer. Just like our research is being concealed, maybe her identity is concealed too. I'm sure her name is an alias as well. I'm just a doctor and a researcher. Without Takano-san's support, it would be impossible for me to manage this institution. She's a pipeline to her clients in Tokyo, my assistant, as well as a researcher who's an expert on Hinamizawa syndrome. Her existence is absolutely necessary here. The more I think about it, the more I feel this should have been the Takano Institute rather than the Irie Institute. She should have been the director. But that was explained to me when they asked me to take this position. We saw that. My client wanted a civilian to manage this place. They searched for a person who met the requirements, and there I was. I became the director. I have a feeling I'm just a puppet on their strings. But I won't just sit here and do nothing. I was asked to research a rare disease. I'm a researcher, so of course I'm excited about that. My client's goals might be different, but I'm here out of the desire to unravel the mysteries of Hinamizawa syndrome and be the first person to uncover a new mystery for mankind. We have all this data that suggests the existence of a parasite as the cause of the syndrome, yet we still can't find factual evidence of the culprit microbe itself. That's true. I thought we'd find it easily if we used an electron microscope. Viruses are too small to see with a regular microscope, so the invention of the electron microscope was a dramatic advancement in the world of medicine. However, it's very expensive and there's no way for a normal doctor to acquire one. The late Dr. Takano said an electron microscope could find the cause of the disease, but it seems his theory has been proven wrong. Even Takano-san was hoping an electron microscope would find it. She was disappointed when she didn't uncover anything after all the autopsies she performed. Our research seems to be having its first snag. It's actually stalled our work for several weeks now, so we need to think about where to go from here. Which means they're either smaller than microscopic, or maybe there is something wrong with the specimen itself. What do you mean? For example, as you know, wild mice have tons of fleas on them, but you can't find fleas on dead mice. That's because when the mouse dies, their habitat dies as well. So if the host dies, the parasite's world will end too. That's right. Just like you won't find a living human in a post-apocalyptic world. Therefore, we just have to look into the earth before it ends, right? That's true. However, we need to think about human rights. It's hard to look into a brain while the patient's still alive. Examining a living human's brain. No matter how you sugarcoated it, that bore very grave meaning. From a medical standpoint, it's necessary. But we have rules and morals in this world, and we have to advance medicine within such boundaries. There was a time when I was studying lobotomies for the betterment of mankind. I don't think I was wrong. However, could I ever be forgiven under our ideas of ethics? Yeah, we were told about Irie being locked down because of his sort of unethical, or how the world viewed unethical procedures. I don't know. One day, my judgment will be handed down by the devil. Whether I'm guilty or not, I have to accept it. As I reflected upon my past, I heard a voice. It was Takano-san's. It was very clear and simple, yet it struck me with surprise. Understood. Let me prepare a world on the verge of death. What? I'm startled. Sometimes the phrase advancing medicine bore the whisper of the devil, tempting us to accept sacrifices. I heard that devil whisper. It's not that difficult. I just have to find a Hinamazawa resident who is about to die. That's all. But even if they're about to die, who would be brave enough to provide their body for research while still alive? Don't worry about that. If they're dying anyway, we're just going to put them to sleep a little sooner. On paper, of course. The patient would be legally declared dead, even though they're still alive, and we perform an autopsy while they're still alive. That's impossible. Besides, if we perform neurological surgery, we have to do a circular incision on the cranial area. The family will notice the marks for sure. That's where we come in. I'll have the mountain dogs look for a patient in a local hospital that matches our needs immediately. All you have to do is to wait with a knife and a fork in your hands. I'll bring your meal right away. Miyo Takano-san's my partner, there's no question about that. But I just can't trust her. It's her extremities as a researcher which contrast largely with mine. But are we so different? I'm here simply waiting with a knife and fork in my hands, just as she told me to. I just don't want to witness such a gruesome scene, that's all. What she's preparing for me now is exactly what I want. Who's the hypocrite? Not her. It's me. How can I say I'm different, knowing what I've done in the past? I've performed lobotomies without the patient's consent, despite it being surgery that might affect their life forever. How's that different from what she's doing? I've never doubted my past achievements. However, when I look at her, I start to feel unease. Takano-san's talking to Okanogi-san on the intercom in my office. I'm sure she's telling him to come over so she can explain to him what was just discussed. I'm simply watching without stopping her. I begin to reflect upon my past, to remember why I chose to become a doctor. Okay, he's having doubts. So they're going to find a patient who's almost dead, and Irie's having doubts about researching him, I guess. Okay, should we see if we can find the next one after this one? Is the other one still blue? Yeah, it is. Okay. Right. So, prior consent for the collection of is required. So that's the next one, right? That links? No, it's not. It sounds about right, but it's not. The death of Koizumi-sensei. Koizumi, no, he hasn't died yet. The death of the dam construction site manager, no. Fragments required first, don't want to do that yet. Rikufuda's high fever is required, I haven't done that. Completion of the medicine is required. Okay, so Irie's reminiscence, that's the one we just saw, right? Yeah, here we go, we can carry on. I've wanted to become a doctor ever since I was little. Doctors make a lot of money. People look up to doctors. I think those are the kind of reasons I had. So when I played with my friends, I always acted like a doctor. I cleaned their wounds, applied ice packs when my friends sprained their ankles, using what I learned from household medical books. Everyone, including me, believed that I'd be a doctor one day. Good old Irie. My family was poor, so they praised me for that goal. They told me that I needed to study a lot to become a doctor, so they borrowed some pseudo-medical books from the local library for me. The rental fees weren't cheap, so I would speed read one book in a day, and the next day, my parents would go back to the store to exchange it for a different book, saying they accidentally borrowed a book they already borrowed before. By doing so, my parents borrowed 2 books for the price of 1. Of course, now I know those books were rather useless, but they were highly motivational just the same. My neighbours called me Dr. Kiyosuke-kun, and I was always picked for class health officer at school. Even my teachers helped me with the classes I needed to take to become a doctor. Of course, in reality, becoming a doctor isn't as easy as it might seem. I had to study diligently, and the path was most definitely rough. To become a doctor, one must attend college. Since my family was poor, I was told I wasn't allowed to go to an expensive private school, so I had to be admitted to a national public university. My grades weren't bad, but the admission rate to national public universities is very marginal. Especially since I wanted to go to a medical school, my chances were even smaller. I studied like crazy. My only driving force was my childhood dream of becoming a doctor. The dream of becoming a doctor and to be looked up to by everyone kept me going. And I was admitted. I wasn't at the top of the list, but I made it in. I was finally at the starting point of making my childhood dream come true. My parents were thrilled. Neither my father nor mother went to college, so they were proud of their son getting into a public medical school. They invited our relatives over to celebrate. Although it was a public university, tuition wasn't cheap, but they still had an extravagant celebration anyway. My father didn't express his emotions much. He always kept a straight face. He rarely voiced his opinion or took initiative on anything. My mother took care of everything, and he showed up last and left without saying a word. He was the typical stern and silent Japanese father of the time. That's why I was surprised to see him shedding tears of joy, and I cried along with him. He went around to all my relatives while repeatedly slapping my back, saying how proud and lucky he was to have a son like me. He bragged about my achievements to all who could hear them. The celebration became my farewell party as I was about to leave for Tokyo. My father yelled, "Banzai!" repeatedly at the station as the train pulled away. What's that mean? Banzai. I've heard the word. I was a little embarrassed, but when I could no longer see my father, I could clearly recall the tears pouring down. The days of hellish studying and exams began after that. Some days I was tempted to just give up and submit myself to the lavish lifestyle of the city, but the letters from my family always encouraged me and gave me the strength to go on. My dream then was to open up my own clinic in my hometown so I could contribute to the region. I never even dreamed of getting involved with brains. One day I noticed a difference in a letter from my family. The letter said the usual things about how it was at home and asked how I was doing, but the postscript was what caught my attention. Your father has become really violent lately. Sometimes he turns the house upside down. I don't know what to do. I just couldn't picture him acting viciously. I was extremely surprised. Did something happen? But in the postscript, my mother said that there was nothing she could think of. My mother and father had been together for a long time. They'd been together since well before I was born, so she noticed things that I couldn't. She couldn't even think of a reason why my father had become so violent. What happened? They got along so well. They were such a lovely couple. When I caused a problem for my mother, when I was little, my father only bonked my head with his knuckle. Why was he acting this way towards my mother? Maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding between them. I was going home for the new year. Maybe I could have a good talk with him then. But the situation was a lot more serious than I thought. On one cold winter day, I found my apartment door unlocked. I thought someone had broke in, but I found my mother in my apartment with her luggage. That's right. My mother could no longer take my father's fury and came to stay with me. This was back when people still believed in the proverb, a woman has no place to settle down all her life. She couldn't go back to her own family because they lived in the same region as my father, so she came all the way to Tokyo. I heard about my father's violence from my mother's own lips. She cried, saying she had no idea why such a quiet man changed like that. She said she wasn't ever going back to him. I didn't know what to do. I asked her if she could talk to him one more time, but the bruises on her body told me it was no use. To remember what happened afterwards is too much, so I'll be brief. After my mother left, my father thought she was having an affair and went over to the neighbour's house with a wooden sword. He was arrested. He was released immediately, but he assumed someone in the neighbourhood was hiding her, so he did the same thing repeatedly. He eventually reached the point of getting into fights with anyone he saw. At the end, he picked a fight with some young punks and ended up being beaten to death. Oh. My relatives gave my father a decent funeral, but my mother didn't attend. It's no use beating a dead horse. So nobody said anything negative about my father, but everyone was simply puzzled as to why he changed so much. What I heard from my relatives about my father's final days was a lot stranger than what I heard from my mother. My mother only told me about his sudden rage and violence, but my relatives told me he also laughed and grew sad. Apparently he displayed several sudden fluctuations of emotion, especially so in his last years. They also told me that he started to complain about headaches after an accident he had. My father was a construction worker. He had hit his head hard on a construction board during an accident at work. He regained his consciousness quickly and seemed fine, but since the accident he started to have headaches and behave abnormally. I sensed the connection between the accident and my father's changes, so I talked to my father after I went back to Tokyo. My professor. I can't say for certain, but it sounds like it's possible your father suffered some kind of brain damage. It's a chance that blow to his head caused an organic mental disorder. The symptoms your father showed in his final years are similar to the delirium and mental fluctuations we've often seen in similar patients. Human behaviour is created by the brain, and if the brain's damaged it can cause erratic behaviour. In other words, my father wasn't crazy, he was suffering from a disorder. If you can perform an autopsy on him, you should check his brain carefully. Maybe you'll find something like a tumour there. My father had already been cremated, so there was no way of knowing. But hearing about his behaviour, I knew for sure. That was the only way to explain why such a quiet and gentle man would change. I tried to explain all this to my relatives to regain my father's honour, but hardly anyone understood. If his brain was damaged, he would have been dead. But he was alive and well, so the accident didn't damage his brain. It wasn't his brain that caused him to change, it was his mind. They simply brushed it off like that. This is the perception most people have about the brain. They don't realise the mind and the brain are connected. Most of the relatives didn't believe me. What's the difference between a mind and a brain then? There was only one person who I really wanted to, anyway, to believe him. That was my mother. As she got older, she grew senile, and she exaggerated the abuse she had to endure. All she did was criticise my father, and every time she ended up crying, lamenting that she married him. They were a lovely couple. We were a great family. That's why I wanted to convey to her that she was misunderstanding the situation with my father. My father's behaviour was caused by his brain damage. Oh, I got it. What he did to her was very sad, but he didn't want to be that way. I told her that he wasn't at fault. But my mother didn't understand. Before she took her last breaths, I begged her to forgive my father, but her final words were, "Please don't bury me next to that man." My father wasn't at fault. He was simply the victim of a brain disorder. You don't complain to a person who's coughing because he has a cold, because coughing is just a symptom. He should be sympathised with. In my father's case, the symptoms weren't as obvious as a cough. They took the form of changes in personality, which were much harder to recognise. If I had studied the brain more, I could have explained it better to my mother so that she could have understood him. Then they could have been a nice couple again in heaven. When I realised that, I cried. And I also realised that there are plenty of people like my father in this world who are suffering from a disorder, yet they are misunderstood and despised for it. And then I found out about a miraculous cure for such disorders called a lobotomy. Ever since that day, I spent my days learning about the brain so I could help people who are suffering from mental illnesses. My father is gone, but if he was still alive, I could cure him myself. So he and my mother could reconcile. That's the main reason why I am here. It's nice to be learning about the adults and everything. Like, really. These are characters that we didn't get to know the backgrounds of too much during the other arcs. The sort of child arcs. So it's really nice. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut things off here for the episode. But I'll have to try and remember. It's going to be tough to sort of remember which direction to go in now. Which ones we've seen, which ones we haven't, especially as we go further along. But I'm hoping I remember well enough. I'm loving it though. I'm loving the sort of direction the arc has taken. It's a bit more interactivity, you know. So, this has been Greeny XI. Hope you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in a bit when we try and find a couple more tiles or fragments. See you in a bit, folks.